To make deeper sense of those official poverty data, it's useful, I think, to know something about how the data are gathered. Your readings review some of the nuts and bolts of that, but I want to highlight a few of the key issues. Now, there are a lot of different ways to think about what poverty is or what it means to be poor. There is no right answer to that. There is no objective meaning for poverty. There's no such thing, which I think surprises some people. Poverty means different things to different people at different times. But how we define poverty and how we measure it, what we say it is to be poor and how we determine how many people fit into that definition, that has effects on what kind of solutions we seek, on which kinds of programs we create, on who's eligible for assistance. Or as political scientist E. Schattschneider put it, as you can see here, the definition of the alternatives is the supreme instrument of power. All right, so let's talk about the official definition. So first, there's the poverty threshold. This is the poverty line for 2017 set at about $25,000 for a family of 4. So if your gross income is above that line, even by $1, you are not poor. Congratulations. And if it's below it, you qualify as poor for Census Bureau purposes. $25,000 for a family of 4. Most people tend to think that line is set too low. In fact, there are lots of complaints about the method of determining how many people are poor, and those complaints come from across the political spectrum, and they fall into 2 broad categories. One are complaints about problems with how that threshold is set, that $25,000 for a family of 4. And then another set of complaints about how we determine whether people's income falls above or below that line, right? So let's first talk about what it is that counts as income in the official Census Bureau measure. As shorthand, think of it as cash income only from whatever source. And for particular historical reasons that I won't bore you with right now, when the Census Bureau adds up your income to determine if you fall above or below the poverty line, there's a lot that it doesn't take into account. So it doesn't count what's sometimes called near cash income, like food stamp benefits or housing voucher assistance or the value of things like Medicaid. But it also doesn't account for a lot of expenses, too. It doesn't count income taxes, it doesn't count payroll taxes, or medical expenses, or childcare expenditures, and more. And it sets that threshold, that $25,000 for a family of 4, using a very old formula that's based on outdated data on the cost of food. So among other things, it doesn't account for the fact that food is cheaper than when it was designed and housing and healthcare are much more expensive. And that official threshold has no geographic variation either. That cutoff line, right, that poverty line, it's exactly the same in New York City or San Francisco as it is in rural Mississippi or Idaho. And yet $1 means very different things in those different places, as you can see here. Moreover, the official poverty threshold has gotten more out of date with time. So in the early 1960s, the poverty line was a pretty good reflection of how many people were below median income, and that's actually a standard that many other nations use to measure poverty. But as its accuracy has eroded over time, especially as food costs have declined and housing and medical costs have risen, it's no longer a measure of those who fall below median income, but closer to a measure of those who fall below half median income. That is, it's less a measure of poverty now than it is a measure of deep poverty. As I said, the official measure is riddled with methodological problems.